On the 26th of December 1900, a supply vessel called the Hesperus made its scheduled approach toward a cluster of remote islands 20 miles off the western coast of Scotland. The islands were called the Flannan Isles. The largest of them, Flannan Moor, which in Gaelic means simply the Big Island, sat out in the open Atlantic, windswept and treeless and barely habitable, home to nothing but seabirds, ancient stone ruins, and a lighthouse that had been operational for just over a year. Relief keeper Joseph Moore climbed the stone steps from the landing stage to the station's entrance, knocked twice without answer, and pushed the unlocked door open. The lighthouse was empty. 3 men had been stationed on Flannan Moor's principal keeper James Ducat, second assistant Thomas Marshall, occasional keeper Donald MacArthur, a last-minute replacement whose presence on the island was the result of another man falling ill at precisely the wrong moment. 3 seasoned veterans who knew this coast, who understood the Atlantic in winter, who had signed contracts making clear that under no circumstances was the light to be left unmanned. Not one of them was there. Not in the tower, not on the island, not anywhere. Unbeknownst to Moore, standing alone in that silent station with the Atlantic wind pressing against the stone walls around him, he had just walked into one of the most baffling and enduring maritime disappearances in the history of the sea. A case that has never been officially closed, only set aside. A case that has defeated every researcher, every historian, every meteorologist, and every armchair detective who has sat down with the one document the men left behind and tried to make it make sense. What happened in those final hours before the 3 men vanished? Whose sea or what was capable of removing 3 grown men from a fortified tower on a rock in the middle of the ocean? And what does the lighthouse log, the only evidence, the last record of their thoughts, actually tell us? Those 3 questions have been asked for over 120 years. We will return to them, and every time we do, the answer will feel like it is almost within reach. It never is. To understand how 3 men could vanish without a trace from a lighthouse on a rock, you first need to understand where they were. Nothing about the Flannan Isles invites comfort. Gaelic-speaking communities on the Scottish mainland called them the Seven Hunters, and their relationship with those islands was one of deep, generational unease. Fishermen believed the islands were cursed, home to something old, something that did not welcome human presence. For centuries, sailors passing the Flannans would remove their hats in silence. Nobody chose to live there. The islands were used occasionally for grazing sheep, and the men who crossed for that purpose reportedly followed strict rituals. No open fires, no sitting without first asking permission of the air itself, no calling certain things by their real names. When the Northern Lighthouse Board announced plans to build on Flannan Moor in the late 1890s, construction workers reportedly refused to sleep on the island. Each night they anchored offshore and returned to work only with the morning light leaving before dark. These men were paid well. This was not laziness. This was something else entirely. Completed in 1899, the station was a serious and formidable structure, 80 feet of tower built directly into the volcanic rock, with 2 separate landing stages cut into the cliff sides, one on the east and one on the west. Keepers rotated in shifts, 2 men stationed at all times, one on shore leave. A system designed for resilience, a system that had worked without a single incident for 14 months. Then December 1900 arrived, 11 days before the Hesperus reached the island. A passing steamer called the Arctur had already logged something troubling. The tower was dark as they sailed past. Dark, a structure that was supposed to be turning, sending its beam out across the shipping lanes and warning vessels away from the submerged rock formations of the Outer Hebrides. Completely dark. The crew noted it in the log. They were not alarmed enough to report it immediately. Weather in that stretch of Atlantic in December is brutal, communication is slow, and anomalies, though unusual, are not unheard of. They sailed on. By the time the Hesperus arrived 11 days later, whatever had happened on Flannan Moor was long over. Whatever it was had already been done. Moore's account of what he found remains the closest thing this case has to a primary source, and it is worth following him through the station room by room. The entrance gate to the western landing stage was open, unlatched and swinging, when it should have been secured against the weather. Inside, 2 complete sets of oilskins hung on their hooks, 2 pairs of boots on the floor beneath them. MacArthur's set was missing entirely, meaning he had dressed for outside and the other 2 had not. A meal had been laid on the table, interrupted mid-preparation. The clock on the wall had run down and stopped. And on the desk in the watchroom sat the lighthouse log. Reading it, Moore found everything considerably stranger than he had hoped. Marshall's entries for the 12th, 13th, and 14th of December described a tempest unlike any ordinary Atlantic gale. On the 12th, he wrote of winds unlike anything he had witnessed in 20 years of service. By the 13th, the violence had not relented. The men had not slept, and Ducat, described by Moore to the official inquiry as large, experienced, and entirely unflappable, had been reduced to tears. MacArthur's composure had collapsed entirely. On the 14th came more of the same: prayer, absolute fear, the language of maritime professionals who believed, with complete sincerity, that they were about to die. And then the entry for the 15th. Ducat's handwriting this time, neat, composed. The storm had ended. The sea was calm. God was over all. Then nothing. No further entries. No explanation. No sign. Here is where the case stops being a tragedy and starts being something that resists every framework you try to place over it. Because the meteorological office later confirmed there had been no severe storm in the area of the Flannan Isles between the 12th and the 15th of December. Official weather records for that period show nothing exceptional. There had been a significant gale earlier in the month, violent enough to damage equipment on the western landing stage. But during the dates described in the log, recorded conditions were comparatively mild. So either the log was wrong, or the records were wrong, or 3 seasoned maritime professionals spent 3 days in a state of absolute terror because of something that left no trace in any official measurement. That is the unresolved center of this case. Not just what took these men, but what broke them first. Because those December entries do not read like the account of men fighting a gale they knew how to survive. They read like the account of men who encountered something they had no framework to understand. Something the sea has no name for. Robert Muirhead of the Northern Lighthouse Board conducted the official inquiry, arriving on Island Moore within days of Moore's discovery. He was methodical, thorough, and utterly unconvinced by anything paranormal. His conclusion: all 3 men had been struck and killed by a freak wave while securing equipment at the western landing stage, probably simultaneously or within moments of each other. The damaged crane platform at the top of the cliffs, a coiled rope found 40 feet above the waterline, the open gate to the western landing, all of it, Muirhead argued, pointed toward men caught off guard by a wave of exceptional size, a rogue wave. 3 maritime professionals swept from a cliff 40 feet above sea level on a day the record describes as calm. It was the official explanation. It closed the file. It has satisfied almost no one in the 120 years since. Within months of the inquiry, alternative accounts had already begun to surface. A naturalist who visited the island the following summer noted unusual patterns of bird mortality on the western cliffs. An unexplained mass die-off concentrated around the western landing stage. With no identifiable cause, a fisherman from the Isle of Lewis, interviewed decades later, claimed his father had heard screaming from the direction of Island Moore on the night of the 15th. The credibility of that account is difficult to assess, and the Gaelic-speaking communities of the Western Isles did not wait for any inquiry. They already had their answer. The islands had taken the men back. This was the cost of building on ground that had never been offered. Rumors have circulated in the years since, not in academic journals, but among researchers and obsessives who have spent significant time with the archival record, that Muirhead's report did not include everything that was in the log, that there were entries or portions of entries that Moore described verbally to investigators, but that were never reproduced in the official document, that the original log, housed in the Northern Lighthouse Board Archive, contains details that have never been made public. Portions of the archive have been made accessible. Available entries match what the published report contains. Whether anything further exists has not been confirmed. It has not been denied either. Every explanation leaves a fact unexplained. This is the architecture of the thing, the reason it refuses to resolve. The rogue wave accounts for the physical evidence at the landing stage, but not the final log entry, written in calm composure after the tempest supposedly ended. The localized storm theory accounts for the psychological terror in those pages, but not the weather records. The theory that one man walked deliberately into the sea and that the others followed, or had already lost themselves to whatever those 3 days had done to them, explains the emotional register of those entries, but leaves no body, no note, no discernible motivation. Every door opens onto another locked door, and that final entry sits in the middle of all of it, immovable. Ducat's handwriting, calm, resolved, God was over all. Written by a man who, at the moment he set the pen down, appeared to be entirely fine, who then walked outside into a January morning and was never seen again. Fresh evidence arrived in 2018, when researchers published a new meteorological analysis, suggesting that a previously undetected, localized pressure system may have moved through the area in a way that would not have been captured by instruments available in 1900. This would account for the log entries. It would make the terror in those pages factually accurate rather than hallucinatory. It is the most credible scientific development in this case in decades. It still does not explain the final entry. Researchers called that a remaining ambiguity in the record, which is a precise and professional way of saying they ran out of road. James Ducat was 40 years old. He had served in the Lighthouse service for over 2 decades and left behind a wife and 4 children. Thomas Marshall was 28. Donald MacArthur was 40 and should not have been there at all, summoned as a last-minute replacement for a man who fell ill at precisely the wrong time. Their bodies were never recovered. Nothing washed ashore. No wreckage, no debris. In a body of water where the currents reliably return what the sea takes, nothing. Automated in 1971, the station no longer requires keepers. Flannan Moor still sits 20 miles out in the Atlantic, accessible by charter boat from Stornoway when the weather allows. People do make that crossing. You can stand on the western landing stage, look down at the water below the cliff, and try to calculate whether a wave could reach 40 feet up. You can hold the final log entry in your mind, the calm one, Ducat's handwriting. God is over all, and try to reconcile it with everything else. Most people who make that trip come back quieter than they left. Before I give you my theory, drop yours in the comments right now. Rogue wave, psychological break, something the official record was never meant to explain. I want to see exactly where you land on this one. And if you want to go deeper into mysteries the history books quietly buried, there is one queued up next that is going to give you that exact same feeling you're having right now. Don't close the tab. When it comes to what actually happened on Flannan Moor in December 1900, the most dramatic explanations, deliberate self-destruction, something non-human, a coordinated institutional cover-up, are the ones the evidence flatly refuses to support. No proof exists for any of it. The appeal of those theories tells us something about ourselves, and very little about the 3 men. Muirhead's rogue wave remains the most mechanically plausible explanation. Something physical, something violent, something fast. He was probably right about what did it. The 2018 weather anomaly research suggests he may have been wrong about the conditions when it happened. But I have spent time with that log, with the specific language of those December entries, with the image of James Ducat, 20 years of unbroken service, a man described by every colleague on record as completely unshakable, weeping alone in a fortified tower on an Atlantic island. That detail is never fully resolved for me, and in any honest accounting, it has never fully resolved for anyone else who has sat with this case long enough to feel the weight of it. Flannan Moor sits where it has always sat. The light turns every night, automated now, indifferent, illuminating nothing but open water. The original log is in the archive. The final entry is in Ducat's hand. And the question of what came between that calm last line and the empty station Joseph Moore walked into on the 26th of December remains, in every meaningful sense, completely open.